Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Natasha Bowman, who I feel like I truly know. I was telling her that behind the scenes that I'm a fan. I follow her on social media, primarily LinkedIn, and I just feel so connected. But I know that I'll feel even more connected after this interview. So Natasha is a lawyer, author, TEDx, I want to say budding activist, all that. But tell us a bit about yourself, Natasha, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Like you said, I feel like I've known you forever. So this is just surprising to me that this is our first one-on-one conversation. And I admire your work as well and have followed you and been rooting for you behind the scenes for some years now. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you introduced me quite well. That's exactly what I am. I'm an author, a speaker, reformed lawyer, and I'm the president and founder of Performance Renew, which is a leadership development consulting firm. And as you said, kind of have segued into this mental health advocate. Never saw my career taking myself or my career and my brand in that direction, but you never know where life takes you. And so you've just got to embrace it and make the best out of it. So
Awesome. Well, Natasha, this show is about being in the driver's seat, being hands-on, and your career is windy. You're doing so many different things. So tell us how it became clear to you or how you got to the driver's seat where you were calling the shots for your career.
Yeah, I found it, very, very early. I worked for Walmart Stores Incorporated during law school in their legal department and after graduation. And I knew I wanted to be in HR. I knew I wanted to make that transition into HR. And the only reason I went to law school was because I had done a Google search, and this was before LinkedIn, where it would be very easy with LinkedIn, but I did a Google search and I Googled the top Fortune 500 companies, like all 500 of them, found their head of HR and looked at their credentials. And I saw a common theme that many, many, many of them had a law degree. So I said, you know what? I guess I'm going to law school. So that's what I did. That was the first moment. That's like, I'm taking charge of my career. I want to be the VP of a Fortune 500 company of HR. And I was working in HR in a small law office then. And so I was like, I'm getting my law degree. So I got my law degree. Like I said, worked in the legal department at Walmart. And then finally got a role in HR. And I wanted to, I'm a very quick, I want to really, really advance very quickly. And I didn't have labor experience. And although they're not unionized, they had a lot of labor campaigns, and that was part of it. So I actually left Walmart and went to manufacturing so that I could get that labor experience working with unions. And then came back to Walmart with that and got that promotion that way. And that's when I really just kind of found out, you know what, you've got to understand and identify where you want to see yourself, what roles you want, what does those roles need, what are they asking for, and just go get it. And that may mean being very flexible, very agile. My husband, and I know that, hey, at the drop of a dime, we may have to move somewhere real quick, or, I may not be in this job very long. And that's what we've done. We moved to New York from Arkansas so I could be the head of stores up here. And, and that was a quick move. And my husband's like, New York, like, I'm not going to New York, but we did it, and here I found so much momentum and career growth. But it's all about, like I said early on, I had that goal of being the head of HR for a Fortune 500 company, seeing what they were looking for, and just, you know what, I'm going to drop everything, go to law school. I was a single mother then. My son's first day of kindergarten was my first day of law school, and we were 10 hours away from anybody we knew.
Oh my goodness.
But you know what, and that was just, I was like, if I can do this as a single mom, I can do anything. And that's really what set the stage.
Wow, there's so many things that are coming up for me, Natasha. Number one, what do you say to those listeners who do not have the vision? It seemed like you had a clear vision. This is what I want to do. And then let me go find out how. Let me go find out about how others who are doing the role, what am I missing that I need? So what do you say to those listeners who do not have the vision or the clarity of this is what I want to do?
Yeah, you got to find it. You've got to just sit down and do some inflection of where do you see yourself? And more importantly, what are you happy doing? Because I think a lot of times, especially on social media, I see people changing what they do. I feel like on a monthly basis, you can be from I help, women in careers to, oh, I help you write your LinkedIn profile to, oh, now I'm a diversity and inclusion expert. And I see that from one person over the span of a year. And I'm like, that person, and I'm not, hey, I'm rooting for you. I want you to be successful. I'm not hating, but it's clear to me that you are not really sitting down and understanding yourself and where you see yourself and what makes you happy and what are you passionate about. You're too busy watching other people be happy and passionate about their careers, and you're like, all you see is that happy and you see that passion and you want that, so you think, oh, well, let me step into those shoes of what they're doing. And and that's where you're missing the mark. And then you step into those shoes, you're like, oh, I'm still not finding what I think, not feeling that feel good. So, oh, but this person seems to be happy. Okay, let me step into their shoes without taking that pause of what makes me happy, what am I passionate about, what feels like a career rather than a job, because once you find that, it happens organically. When I wake up in the morning, I wake up very, very early, I get started. I can't think of a single day where I've woken up like, oh man, I just don't want to do this today. Oh, I can't believe I got to get on this Zoom call. I can't believe I got to get camera ready. No, I'm up at 4:30, doing the best I can with hair and makeup. And it's not perfect, but
4:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're global. Eastern Standard. It's early for me.
call already this morning because I had to meet with somebody in India, so it's like, but I'm happy about, okay, I got to wake up at 4:30 because I got to call in India. And that's okay. That's what I like, what I do. So therefore, that's that passion. And so people miss that opportunity. They're too busy chasing other people's passion and watching them be happy and think, let me step into those shoes, rather than finding what are your shoes that you're wearing that will make you comfortable, that will make you happy. And so that would just be, if you're not there yet, that means that you're too busy watching others. Come off social media. I mean, honestly, come off, shut it down, get in tune with yourself. And because that can be such a distraction when you're seeing everybody else do things that you think you should be doing, but it's not for you.
Well, you make a good point. Come off social media, and you took a big break from social media. So tell us about how you continued to own your career by taking a break from social media.
Yeah. Well, I didn't take a break from social media for the reason that I just told you to take a break from social
Okay.
listeners. I took a break. I'll be honest with you. And if you follow me, I share my story, about this, but I took a break because I had to. I was forced to. I was dealing with significant mental health issues, and it wasn't due to career or anything. And I talk about that a lot because I've gotten so many stories and messages about how people's work environments are contributing to their mental health. Mine wasn't that case. I was diagnosed with a mental illness that wasn't really triggered by anything. It just happened, and maybe COVID. because at the beginning of COVID, and you probably experienced this too in March, everything stopped, right? All your events were canceled. I was on my way to Indonesia to get this big award at my plane. Like everything was just like, I was like, oh, I've checked off all of my 5-year goals in 2, I'm so excited. And then everything stopped. And for about a month or 2, I'm sitting here like, what do I do with myself? And I had invested so much in my career that my mind was just going all over the place. It didn't know where to focus. It had nothing to focus on. And then I went into just over the months, a very downward spiral, although my business picked back up because probably just like yourself, after the murder of George Floyd, organizations wanted to finally have conversations about race and racism in the workplace. So I found myself busier than ever, but I was still going through this downward spiral and I couldn't understand that connection. Wait a minute, I've got everything back. I should be back on top of the world, but I wasn't. And it was because of an undiagnosed mental disorder. So that downward spiral continued. And in January of 2021, I decided I didn't want to be not just on social media. I didn't want to be on this earth anymore. And I attempted to take my life. And after that attempt, and thank goodness I wasn't successful, but I did spend 10 days in a mental health institute involuntarily. And that was a force of coming off of social media. That was a force of, and I had already kind of come off, but it really forced me to spend time with myself and regroup and do things like that. And when I came out, I kind of enjoyed not being on, for a while. So I stayed off for a little while longer and just went through a lot of just personal reflection and, thinking about going back to the theme of owning your career. I really thought about how much I had put into owning my career and not some of the other things in my life, right? That I also should have been very passionate about, because once that career was taken away for those 2 months, that should not have put me in the tailspin that it put me in. I didn't appreciate the family that I had around me. I didn't appreciate some of the other things that I could have used that opportunity to enjoy. And, so I really at that point said, what is it that I'm passionate about besides building my business, besides my career, so that if it's taken away again for some reason, I still feel worthy and I still feel valuable. I think as Black women, a lot of times, we're the most educated demographic in the US when it comes to college degrees. And I think that's because there's always this chase of see me as valuable, see me as worthy, or just see me. And so I had put so much into that, just being seen from a professional perspective, that I wasn't putting a lot of being seen in other ways, right? So once that professional part was taken away, I was left empty. So during that time frame of stepping away from career, stepping away from social media and everything else, I got to really value myself and see who am I outside of my career. Because at that point, I realized that I didn't own my career owned me. I needed to flip that script. And that's what I did. And so I gradually got back into the swing of things. I shared with my clients, that's my first point of vulnerability, what happened, why I had to leave suddenly. Every client was empathetic. They showed, told their stories of their own mental health struggles or someone they knew. I didn't lose any business. Everybody was willing for me to jump right back in there. And then I eventually, as you know, shared it publicly with my LinkedIn community and have received absolutely overwhelming support in regards to that. So it has certainly, when we think about owning our career, right, you never know what can happen with it. It can be COVID that can shut you down. It can be a mental ill, things outside of physical illness, a mental illness, something like that. But like I just said, I just caution you whatever that is, don't get caught up in letting your career own you. You need to truly own your career. And with owning that, that means that sometimes it's just like owning your home, right? Sometimes it's open for guests, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you may have to, move out and do renovations and then you move back in. It's just you got to think about it that way, as a tangible asset that you own, that you take care of, and you call the shots.
Such a powerful, there's so many nuggets there. So powerful. We're going to take a short break and come back. And when we come back, Natasha, I want to ask you how you reframe your formula for owning your career after your life changed so much in the last year or so. So, what is your formula for owning your career? So let's take a short break. Hi there. I hope you're enjoying this episode. This interview is amazing. I do so love it. I want to just jump in and let you know a couple ways that you can work with me. First of all, you can always go to connectwithsimone.com and it will give you the opportunity to get to my books, website, etc. If you want to sit down and have a conversation about your career directly, you can go to careerbreakthroughcall.com and book a free 30-minute call with me to talk about, what's happening in your career. Do you need help with building your confidence? Do you need help with identifying strategic relationships that you need for career success? Do you need help building a career plan? Whatever it is, I'm sure that I can help. So do go to careerbreakthroughcall.com and set up a time for us to have a conversation. Again, it's a free 30-minute call to have a conversation. That's it for now. Let's get back to the interview. Welcome back to our interview with Natasha Bowman, who, Natasha, I can so relate to what you're talking about on some level, because our experiences are so different. Because I remember taking a sabbatical from work because I just needed to take care of myself and reframe my thinking about my career. So you were so transparent and vulnerable. And oftentimes it's hard to be that vulnerable. How do you build a muscle in your career to show your cards? Many of us are holding our cards to the vest because we're afraid of what will happen. And what you shared about wanting to take your life and then being able to share that with your clients, being able to open up on LinkedIn, who, there are many who are very judgmental. What are some tips for vulnerability?
Yeah, I've always been vulnerable. I've always just kind of showed up as myself in many, many different settings. I go back when I thought about it, I was a pageant child. My mother loved putting my sister and I in pageants. So I was in pageants from 2 years old on. And my mother would tell the story too. I was barely walking, but my mother would tell the story of how the other parents would have to pretty much drag their child on the stage, and the child's hiding behind them. And when the first stage that I got to, I told her, okay, you stay put. I'm going out here and I'm doing my thing. And and that's what I did. And it would be strange because I would oftentimes be the only, little Black girl that would be on that stage. I was chubbier than the other kids and looked different, didn't have, the hair they had, whatever. But I would walk on that stage and just own me and my personality,
Right.
and the audience and the judges, and I would win. And and I wasn't nearly as glamorous as, you've seen, like the Jean Bonnet Ram, it wasn't nearly as glamorous as that, but I would go there and just be authentic, be myself, show my personality, and I would win. And that went on for many, many years. I did these things until I was like 16, 17 years old. And so I think that showed me early in my career that you can still win even if you're yourself, even if you're not the smartest person in the room or have the best degree or the prettiest or the whatever. You can still win because it's really about what is winning to you. And to me, I win when I'm able to show up and be my best self, whatever that is. It may not be perfection. And I think that a lot of people think I got to show up my best self as perfection. No, when I show up, That doesn't necessarily mean perfection, but I've given it my best. And I've done that throughout my life. So when I made it to corporate America, I treated it the same way. I came in, I didn't try to code switch. I didn't try to do this corporate conformity. I came in and just, hey, this is who I am. I'm loud, I'm Southern. I like to laugh, even though I'm in HR, like you're supposed to be all serious. Nope, I wasn't, I wanted to laugh. I wanted to put, compassion and empathy into workplaces, and these things that 20 years ago when it was so policy driven. And I would just be like, are we really about to fire this good employee who's our best employee for time and attendance? I mean, is there not something else? Surely there's something else going on we can talk through. And people never had those conversations before, never even thought about it. It was like, oh, check, check, check. Sorry, you got to go. I like you, but you're gone. Why? Why does he have to be gone? So I would challenge that. And I would sit in rooms, as I went up the corporate ladder, I would sit in these rooms of frankly white men and me. And I would sit there and just, really challenge certain things. And I felt comfortable doing it. And I found myself becoming this trusted advisor at some point when people, would come to me, white men that are CEOs of companies and, high ups coming to me and say, hey, check me on this. I want to bounce this off of you. What am I thinking? Am I thinking in the right direction? And I knew, because I'm my authentic self, people feel like they can approach me. People feel as if, that they feel comfortable around me and sharing things. So I have just brought that to every facet of my life. And then when social media came to be, I brought it onto social media. And guess what? It comes with trolls. Believe me, just like I get the supportive messages, I get the nasty messages. And I've learned to just ignore it because, again, I am me. I'm who I say I am, and I'm proud of who I am. And if you're not, then that's too bad. You don't have to follow me. You don't have to read my story. You don't have to look at me. That's your choice.
Yep.
And I think that's what we have to reckon with. So as you talked about shifting, now that I have, gone through this vulnerability and shared these moments and I've kind of shifted my conversation. It's within that same vein. I don't even know what that's going to look like. I've just really started on this journey. Just a couple months ago. I don't know what the end result is going to be. I don't know what the story ending of this is. I'm kind of in the preface part of it. But I do know so far, is that I'm going to create my own narrative around it. I'm going to tell my story, not let someone tell my story for me, not let anyone make assumptions about my story. I was just thinking one day, what if someone says, oh, I saw Natasha, she was admitted, some nurse or something, not supposed to, but it happened. She was admitted into this. And then people start making up stories in their head, why, and this and that. You're like, you know what? I'm owning my narrative. So I'm going to tell you where I was and why I was there, and help you to feel comfortable. Maybe one day you'll be there too. And that's okay, because guess what? If you need to have open heart surgery, you would not hesitate to go into that hospital, check yourself in, and have open heart surgery. So I had to see it that way as well.
So your journey has included time in the corporate space, as well as you're running your own company now. With both of those experiences, what would you say is your formula, or what are the ingredients for successfully owning your career?
It's the vulnerability that we just talked about. People connect to humanness. And when I think about my business, I don't do any marketing, like, whatsoever. It has truly been from sharing my stories on LinkedIn. And I have built a whole business by storytelling and telling my story and being vulnerable about my story, being transparent about what's happening in today's workforce and workplaces, being transparent about leadership. And that's how I've built the business, being vulnerable, being transparent, and being real. And that's all I've needed to do at this point. And so, when people ask me that, oh, what's the key to success? Do you do this? You do a marketing newsletter? I'm like, no, not, I've never really I've never sent out an email list or anything like that. And I'm not putting down those that do. That's great. This is just what has worked for me, and everybody needs to have their own formula. Again, sitting down, once you determine what your passion is, what you want to do, then putting out, well, what does that look like for you? Because not everybody's going to be comfortable putting themselves out there, like I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and I have to consider my family. A lot of times I had to sit, when I get ready to post things, a lot of times I had to sit down with my family and say, are you comfortable with me posting this? Are you comfortable with me posting a conversation that we just had? Are you comfortable with me exposing this part of myself? I have kids in school, one in college, one in middle school. I don't need them to be bullied because their mother is out there putting their business out there in the street,
Yeah.
putting business out there in the street. And they have been absolute, oh yeah, mom, they'll come home. I showed your post to my friends and they were like, oh wow, your mom is cool, that's not everybody's household, so that's my formula, but everybody needs to sit down and determine what's their formula,
Mm,
and I feel like that's what my storytelling is, what's unique about me, right? I don't want a whole bunch of blueprint, we
sure.
should have the same blueprint. We need to bring our own flavor to the table, and of course you can model some of my things, and I think that's great, but also determine what's your unique flavor that you're bringing, what's your uniqueness. And again, going back to being on social media and just copying what somebody else is doing, that's not going to work for you. It just isn't, not in the long run. You may have immediate success, but not in the long run, because that's not you. And you can't be somebody else for too long. So again, it's about understanding who you are. You can be inspired by others. There were definitely people, and I got on LinkedIn, that I was inspired by their work. Dr. Shelley Davis, she was
Love
one of the
her.
first, yes, and one of the first, in the D&I space and
Yeah.
speaking. I was like, oh, who is this Black woman who goes all over the world speaking? And and I was fascinated by that. I was like, oh, that's something maybe I want to do. And but I didn't just like take her playbook and just copy and paste. Okay, I know what the end result is. I know, hey, I want to be on national stages talking about what I think the challenges are in workplaces and what's working well, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to figure
Mhm.
out, how does this fit into my personality and who I am? So you can be inspired, but don't carbon copy, someone. It's about your journey in defining it.
Wonderfully stated. I want to ask you about resources that have been helpful to you along the way. If you would share some with our listeners, and if you want to, you can talk specifically about LinkedIn, since that's your jam, but any resources that you want to share with the audience.
It's really, I mean, for me, it's LinkedIn. I spend several hours a day on LinkedIn, either posting or just reading posts, understanding, because again, my wheelhouse is the workplace. So I'm reading people's experiences, right? And that's what inspires me to share, my stories, so I start seeing things over and over again. I'm like, okay, let me put my 2 cents in on this. This seems to be a conversation that's happening. So, really, like I said, understanding where your wheelhouse are, connecting with people within that, and, following their journeys, and then determining, well, what spin do you have to put on that? What's your
Mhm.
expertise on that? And that's really what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm very, very much self-taught, as my husband would say. I taught myself HR, I taught myself social media. So, but it's about watching and understanding human behavior. And I think that we don't do that enough. I watch people, I ask questions of people, and I, try to get into the minds of people to understand human behavior. And once you kind of have that down, that allows you to connect with them. And then those connections lead to other things. It can lead to business opportunities, it can lead to lifelong friends, it can lead to getting support for someone that you didn't think that you would have support from, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's about that. And so I said, that's my resources, LinkedIn, and the people there, and being inspired by them. But other people's sources may be through mentors. I don't really have a mentor, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Um, um, It's my resource. My husband is kind of my silent business partner. Behind the scenes, he stays very shy, very, very behind the scenes. But we have almost on a nightly basis what I call a war room session where we talk about, okay, this is what's going on out there. We philosophize on it and, talk about, what angle, what this. So he's been a great resource. He's a very, very smart historian. And a lot of times he'll help me put that historical perspective on things. In fact, my new book that's coming out next year, The Power of One, Leading with Civility, Candor, and Courage, and it was also the title of my TED Talk, was inspired by a historical story he told me,
Mhm.
and so my new training for next year, Hourship, moving from allyship to hourship, was
Love
inspired.
that.
Thank you. Was inspired by a historical story he told me. So it's, using those different resources, looking at things from different perspectives. And like I said, putting then your own unique value on that.
I love that. Bring your flavor to the table, to
Mhm.
use your language. Love that so much. Natasha, talk to us about risk because you left your corporate space,
Mhm.
and you've taken risks in your career. How do
Mhm.
you, you talked about moving from Arkansas, I believe you said, to New
Mhm.
York.
Yeah.
Some people out there won't say yes to those opportunities because of
Mhm.
fear. How do you embrace risk and use it as a lever to level up in your career?
Because when I study successful people, I see that's what they've done. They have, you look at the way Apple started up in someone's garage, Amazon, I think was in someone's garage. You look at, Netflix, who was sending out these DVDs, and people are like, you've lost your mind. And I study those types of things, and I'm like, it doesn't come without sacrifice. It doesn't, you just don't wake up one day and like, oh, I'm successful. It just doesn't happen that way. And you've got to take those risks. Even moving to New York from Arkansas on an Arkansas salary was horrific. I came before my family and we saw the prices and we really couldn't afford to live. I was like, oh my gosh, I would sell this job. I can't afford to live here. So I ended up for the first 3 months, we were in relocation for like a few months. And then that ran out and I still hadn't found anywhere affordable. So I ended up renting a room from this random lady and sleeping on her floor. Didn't even have furniture. I slept like on
Wow.
the floor and shared a bathroom with this lady. And here I am, this high up Walmart person, but New York was so expensive. I'm like, but this is going to pay off in the long run. I need this experience. And so I did that for like 3 months. And then finally we found this house, which is a creepy house. Anyway, long story short, we finally have settled in New York nicely, but that's what you do, and shortly after I came here, I was extended an opportunity to teach at Georgetown in DC. And I knew, that would be prestigious on my resume. That was a wonderful opportunity. But I was also working a full-time job here in New York because I was at Walmart then. So I, for half a day, would travel on a plane, have my computer working, travel half a day once a week to DC. I would teach my class, which was like from 6 to 10. But
Uh,
guess what? There were no planes or trains coming back at night. So I had to take a mega bus
oh my goodness.
to New York all night long. I would get to Penn Station like at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then I take another train from Penn Station to Long Island, where I was living. So I would get home just enough time to take a shower and get ready to go back to work.
Oh my goodness.
4 nights of rest that was gone every single week, but it was worth it. It paid off. Though, in fact, that's when I decided to do the consulting thing because somebody reached out to Georgetown and said, hey, can you send a consultant about workplace, yada, yada, yada. My dean at that time, Dr. Christopher Metzler, who's big in the D&I space, recommended me. And I paid it. And I'm like, oh, you can make this much money in one day talking about this. And that's what inspired consulting, so big payoff there. So you have to make those sacrifices. I'm not encouraging anybody to lose sleep. Like I said, now I know that I had this little mental illness that probably helped me to be able to do that. But I am saying go after it, but know that it doesn't come without those risks and the sacrifice. You may lose some, that's fine. Get back up on your feet, start over again. You may start going down one path, you realize that's not the right path. Just like your GPS will tell you, just reroute. You can still get to your same destination. You're just taking a different route, and that's okay. You still arrive.
Well, as we begin to wrap up, I'm so enjoying this share. As we begin to wrap up, if you had to name your career body of work, what would the title be?
Oh, I think it would be exactly what my book is named, The Power of One.
I had a feeling you'd say that.
The one person, one action, sometimes one word can make a difference. And so there's power in one person. Use your power, use your ordinary actions that can influence extraordinary change. And that's what I try to do when I talked about vulnerability, transparency, being real. Those are my ordinary actions that have, influence extraordinary change. And I hope that they will continue to do if I'm given the opportunity to do so.
I'm sure they will. Natasha, it's been such an honor to have you on the podcast. Can you please tell our listeners how to stay connected with you?
Absolutely. So I've talked about LinkedIn a lot. So LinkedIn is where I put most of my thought leadership and engage with people. Just type in my name, Natasha Bowman, JD, SPHR. You can visit my website, performance-renew.com.
Awesome. Well, again, it has been an honor to get to know you better and to learn from your career wisdom. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.